Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and we're back here today with another edition. If you've been following me for any amount of time, a very surprising edition of Budget Magic. So, we are playing Mono Red Burn in Modern. Before you start freaking out, I am a well-known burn hater. I hate everything about burn decks. I lose to them. They beat most of the decks I build. I like playing control decks. They are rough on control decks. Everything about Mono Red, I think they're simplistic and not very in-depth, and everything about them drives me crazy. But to be fair, I have never really given them a fair shot. Plus, we're in this weird lull where we're waiting for Oath of the Gatewatch to come out, so Standard isn't all that interesting to me right now. And it is a classic budget archetype. If you want to build a cheap deck that's going to be competitive in Modern, Mono Red Burn is got to be on that list. So we are playing Burn, and honestly, this is the first time in my entire Magic history that I've even tried playing a Burn deck. I have just, I guess, hated them without ever giving them a fair shot. So I'm going to give it a fair shot and see maybe it isn't as mind-numbingly horrible as I expect. So anyway, let's talk about the deck. Obviously, being a budget deck, we are mono red, so we don't get Atarka's Command, Boros Charms, fetch lands, so we got to make some substitutions. One of the things we have is this interesting creature package. We have 4 Spark Elementals, which is a 1-mana 3/1. It has Trample and Haste, and you sacrifice it at the end of turn. Basically, on turn 1, this is a Lava Spike most of the time. You just play it, attack with it, hit your opponent for 3, it dies, that's the end of it. Hellspark Elemental is basically a double Spark Elemental. It costs 2 mana, you get a 3/1 Trample and Haste, sacrifice it at the end of turn, but then you can unearth it for 2 mana, so in theory, on an empty board, for 4 mana, it deals 6 damage, split up over 2 turns. Then we have Keldon Marauders. This is a really sweet budget burn card. One of the things about the burn deck is we try to deal damage in chunks of 3. That just works out efficiently with fetch lands and shock lands. Typically, if you can resolve 6 3-damage burn spells, you win the game. Well, Keldon Marauders breaks this mold, sort of. So it's a 3/3 for 2 mana, but it has Vanishing 2. So at the beginning of your upkeep, you remove a time counter from it, and when the last one is removed, you have to sacrifice it. But it deals 1 damage to a target player when it enters the battlefield, so you're guaranteed to get 1 damage when it resolves. It deals another damage to target player when it leaves the battlefield, so that's 2 guaranteed damage, and then basically, since it has Summoning Sickness, you get 1 turn to attack with it. So if you play it on turn 2 and actually get in the attack with it, it can deal 5 damage all on its own. So you get a guaranteed 2 damage, but if you happen to get in a hit on the 1 turn it's alive, it deals 5 damage, which is really powerful for 2 mana. So those are our creatures. Obviously, no Goblin Guides, not even any Monastery Swift Spears. We are going very budget with our creature base to try to keep the deck as cheap as possible. Spell-wise, we have a million Lightning Bolts. We have 4 Literal Lightning Bolts, 1 mana, 3 damage to target creature or player. We have 4 Shard Volleys, 1 damage, 3 damage to target creature or player, but you also have to sacrifice a land to cast it. So we really don't want to fire this one off on turn 1 because we want our lands, but it's a fine way to finish off the game, and our deck doesn't need that many lands to function, so we don't really mind sacking a land on turn 3 or turn 4 most of the time. And then Rift Bolt, 3 mana, does 3 damage to target creature or player, but you can suspend 1, so for 1 red mana, so you suspend it, you exile it, you wait 1 turn, and then you get to cast it for free. So it's basically a lightning bolt, but you have to wait 1 turn for it to deal the damage. Or you can pay the 3 mana and do it all in 1 time. So we have 12 lightning bolts. Then we have some other random burn spells. We have 4 Lava Spikes. This one is basically like the Spark Elemental on a spell, or the Spark Elemental is a Lava Spike on a spell. It is 3 damage to target player. So it's a lightning bolt, but it can't hit creatures. But that's fine. It's just another way on turn 1, boom, 3 damage to our opponent's face. Magma Jet. This one's interesting. It only does 2 damage, but it lets us scry 2, and our deck really never wants to get past 2 or 3 lands. So even though it only does 2 damage, and it's a little expensive because it's 2 mana for that 2 damage, it has some extra value by putting lands to the bottom. So in a sense, we want our draw steps to represent 3 damage as often as possible. So being able to scry a dead land to the bottom actually makes Magma Jet do more damage than it seems, or than is written on it. And then Searing Blaze is an awesome one. It's 2 red mana. It's an instant. It does 1 damage to target player and 1 damage to a creature that player controls, to target creature that player controls. Or if we had a land enter the battlefield, we triggered a landfall and it does 3 damage to the player and to the creature. So it's another way to deal 3 damage, but it also gets a creature out of the way at the same time. In our deck, since we don't have fetch lands, it works really well with fetch lands since you can leave up an untapped fetch and play at instant speed. In our deck, we're usually playing Searing Blaze as a sorcery because we want to be able to make our land drop for the turn and then Searing Blaze to get the full value out of it. Then we have a small burn package that also keeps our opponent from gaining life, which can be pretty important. One thing our deck does not want to see is life gain from our opponent's side of the battlefield, because each life they gain is another turn that we need to draw a card. So a Lightning Helix, for example, that gains our opponent 3 life, that's another turn or 2 of draw steps we need to draw enough burn to finish the game. So Skullcrack, 2 mana, does 3 damage to a player, and that player can't gain life this turn, and damage can't be prevented. And then Flames of the Blood Hand, it is 3 mana, but it does 4 damage to target player, and damage can't be prevented, and if a player would gain life, they gain no life instead. So, the other trick with this is they kind of give us an out to things like Core Firewalker. If we Skullcrack, the damage can't be prevented, which means protection won't work, and then we can Lightning Bolt a Core Firewalker or something like that. So that's the main reason they're in their deck, is because sometimes preventing life gain is really relevant. Then, mana base wise, as simple as can be, 18 mountains. We want to play as few lands as possible. Like I said, we only really want to get to 2 or 3 lands, and there are definitely plenty of hands we keep with 1 land. So one of the ways this deck loses is by drawing too many lands, because we want our draw steps to represent damage as often as possible. And when we draw 2 or 3 lands in a row, or get up to 5 or 6 lands on the battlefield, those are games we don't win all that often. So we want to try to skimp as much as possible on the lands. Sideboard-wise, pretty basic. 2 Rending Volleys. Well, in between the time I recorded these videos and made the deck and released these videos, we found out that Splinter Twin is now banned in Modern, or will be banned in Modern. Rending Volley is in the deck to fight against the Splinter Twin combo. Can probably find a better card for that now that Splinter Twin will no longer be an issue. Searing Blood, 2 copies. It is basically another way to kill a creature while also furthering our game plan of damaging our opponent. Does 2 damage to a creature, and does, if that creature dies, it deals 3 damage to the creature's controller. So it's another way to kill one of our opponent's things while also dealing damage. Smash to Smithereens is the same way. We can destroy an artifact, and it also deals 3 damage to the artifact's controller. So it gives us some fringe value. We can take out a cranial plating, but it's still furthering our game plan of dealing damage to our opponent. Then 2 more Flames of the Blood Hand, more life gain prevention, and also just a big burn spell, 4 damage for 3 mana. 2 Aggressive Mining, not sure about this one, went a little deep. 4 mana enchantment, you can't play lands, but then you can sacrifice land to draw 2 cards, once per turn. My thinking was that maybe there would be control-y long matchups where we would need Aggressive Mining and the card advantage, but I actually never ended up bringing it in. It just didn't play out that way in practice. And then last, but certainly not least, maybe the most important sideboard card in the whole deck, Leyline of Punishment. 4 mana, enchantment. If we have it in our opening hand, we can start with it on the battlefield. Players can't gain life, damage can't be prevented. This is just so important. One of the ways that our deck gets beat is Core Firewalker and Dragon's Claw, random life gain spells, Feed the Clan, and things like that. That's one of the ways we can lose, or some of our bad matchups, Soul Sisters, that's gaining a ton of life. Anything that gains life is just so bad for us. Leyline of Punishment just shuts down that entire line of defense for our opponent. So it is just super, super good, and it plays a big role in a lot of our victories. I'm very, very happy with Leyline of Punishment and glad to have 4 of them in our sideboard. Anyway, that's the deck. I mean, so basically, it sounds simple, and it is kind of simple. It's a deck that's really simple to play, but very hard to play optimally. But we basically just deal damage to our opponent over and over again. 3 damage, 3 damage. We hope that our opponent takes some damage off their shock lands and their fetch lands, and we try to kill them on turn 3 or turn 4 just by casting burn spells at their face. Every single non-land card in our deck is in one way or another a burn spell. Even our creatures are essentially burn spells. We don't have anything that are blocking or sticky around on the battlefield. They are just smashing at our opponent for one turn and hopefully dealing some more damage. And I have to say, and it pains me to say this, but as you will see in the videos, if you want to build a $67 13 tick deck that you can take to a GP or an SCG Open or play leagues on Magic Online, if you want to play competitively and have a deck that can seriously win games in Modern, you probably should be considering this one. Obviously, if you're like me and you just really dislike playing the strategy, that's a different story. But just as far as competitiveness, this one is really off the charts in terms of budget decks. You can also expand it fairly easily to be like Nyaburn or throw in some Goblin Guides. So it's just, if your only goal is to win tournaments and you are trying to break into that scene on a budget in Modern, I think this is the deck that you should build. It's really that simple. It is really insane. And I have to say, after playing it through these matches, not only is it insanely competitive and just absolutely steamrolls people. I mean, I don't want to spoil the videos, but watch the videos. It is really absurd just how powerful this deck is for its price. It is really crazy. All right, but it's not as horrible as I thought. There is some perverted joy in winning a match in 3 minutes on turn 4 and doing this consistently. As much as I don't like the strategy, I do enjoy winning, and so I actually did have fun playing it despite my reservations and long-held bias against the deck. Don't worry, I'm not going to become a burn player. I still have way more fun locking people out of games. Still not my thing, but it is a cool thing to try once in a while, and if you want to win a tournament for as little money as possible, play Mono Red Burn. It's just the best, most competitive budget deck, I think, in Modern at the moment. Anyway, make sure to check out the website, mtggoldfish.com. You can find the article for this Mono Red Burn Budget Magic. You can also find decks, prices, metagame strategy, pretty much anything and everything you could want related to Magic the Gathering. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure to click the subscribe button that's going to pop up on the bottom of your screen. It'll keep you up to date on all the latest and greatest in video content from mtggoldfish.com. Anyway, thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoy the videos, even though we're playing Mono Red Burn, and I will talk to you soon.